Deep state spokeswoman Susan Rice projects globalist plan by saying Zelensky was the victim of a setup. Now, she is right. Yesterday's debacle of a press conference ahead of what was supposed to be the signing of a mineral deal between the United States and Ukraine, it was a setup. What Susan Rice gets wrong is who was doing the setting up. This was supposed to be an ambush of sorts, a minor ambush, but still an ambush of sorts against President Trump. They were trying to hit him from allies, from Zelensky himself, from the press. They were trying to push the notion in the last minute, in a very public fashion, push the notion of having the United States include security guarantees in the mineral deal. This was new to everybody, at least on America's side, but it wasn't new to those who were working towards getting this accomplished. Of course, the end goal is to drag the United States into World War III, but I'll discuss that later. Let's first go to this. Let's go to Susan Rice herself. This comes from Red State. Bob Hoge over there says, former Obama advisor Susan Rice shows where her loyalties lie, claims Zelensky meltdown was a setup. And this is something that they do. They do very well. Okay, the Uniparty swamp does it. The globalists do it far better. Especially when they're caught doing something, they suddenly come out and say, "Oh, right, yeah, no, totally. It was the other side that was doing this." So in this case, they tried to set up President Trump, and since it didn't work, they're claiming that he set up Zelensky. You know, it wouldn't take long before leftists, neocons, and Trump haters would all weigh in on the epic SmackDown at the Oval that took place Friday afternoon where the president and his number 2, VP JD Vance, weren't buying the insolence that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was throwing down. As reported, failed political hacks, both former because nobody would consider voting for them any longer, such as Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, they quickly weighed in with their unhinged takes. Now, former national security advisor and ambassador to the UN and Barack Obama's acolyte, Susan Rice, is jumping on board, and she's got her knickers in a twist. She appeared on MSNBC, of course, she appeared on MSNBC Friday to express her disapproval. Let's pull that up.
Joining our ongoing coverage, former United States ambassador to the United Nations, former national security advisor to President Obama, Ambassador Susan Rice is here. Ambassador, your reaction?
Well, Nicole, obviously it's a very sad day and an embarrassment for the United States on the world stage. But let's step back and analyze what's happened here. I think there's no question that this was a setup. You heard Donald Trump say at the end of that clip you played, this is great television. This was a setup. Volodymyr Zelensky was compelled to agree to a horrible deal that would have sent Ukraine's minerals to the United States without any concrete security guarantees. And yet, because he was trying to improve a relationship with Donald Trump, he came to Washington, he came to the Oval Office and sat down for a meeting, hat in hand. And soon after he got there, the vice president of the United States lit into him and started a confrontation.
Now, let me just stop you right there, Madam Ambassador. That is absolutely positively inaccurate. It wasn't shortly after he got there. That's the clip that a lot of people saw. I would say the vast majority of Americans who were paying attention, they were only shown the last 10 minutes. They didn't get to see the first 40 minutes because during the first 40 minutes, it was crystal clear from the beginning, from his very first words, his opening statement, that Zelensky was the aggressor, that Zelensky was the one who was already showing signs from the first 7 or 8 words that he spoke during that press conference. He was already expressing his contempt for the deal that had already been agreed upon before he even flew down. It was a warning signs were hitting right off the bat, and JD Vance, shortly after he got there, JD Vance didn't say a single word for the first 40 minutes. So Susan Rice is, as always, falls into the category of she's either really stupid and can't tell time, okay? So like she's like, full-blown stupid, or she's telling one of her standard bald-faced lies. Let's keep going.
Now, I've been in countless Oval Office meetings with heads of state, presidents and vice presidents, as National Security Advisor, as UN Ambassador, and in other roles. I can tell you that the Vice President or the Secretary of State or anybody else, they don't jump in, hijack a conversation without the express blessing of the President of the United States. So JD Vance did that deliberately. Donald Trump knew what he was going to do. And I think, as he said at the end, because he can't, help himself, this was a setup for the cameras. It was a play to his base, but above all, it was a play to Vladimir Putin, to show fealty to Vladimir Putin, and to try to humiliate Zelensky. But Zelensky didn't play along with the script, because Zelensky's got dignity and guts, and Zelensky has people that he democratically represents.
I got to stop Madam Ambassador Susan Rice one more time, hopefully the last time, because that was somehow she was able to squeeze in like 3 or 4 additional lies in like 30 seconds. Let's start from the beginning. No, this was not a setup for the sake of the cameras. President Trump's comments came as a result of the idiocy that Zelensky portrayed, as a result of his insolence, his petulance, his, again, idiocy, stupidity. He was being a jerk about the entire thing. He was, if anything, President Trump spent those first 40 minutes trying to save Zelensky, trying to preserve the potential for peace for his people, despite Zelensky's stupid attacks. I mean, I get it. He doesn't like Vladimir Putin. Great. Awesome. You have established that, and rightly so. I'm not saying, he should like Vladimir Putin for invading his country. I'm not suggesting that at all. But this is not the time or the place. Okay? This is a press conference ahead of a lunch before you're about to sign an extremely important deal for your people. You don't start off the negotiations publicly by getting insulting. President Trump was trying to help him and spent 40 minutes trying to do just that. But again, Susan Rice likes to play on the ignorance of the people and pretend like, oh my gosh, JD Vance, they're not supposed to say anything, and this is clearly this is done on the express interest of the president, and he was set up. And no, idiot. I mean, again, I don't think that Susan Rice is stupid. I know she's not stupid. She just hopes that her audience, anybody who listens to her, is stupid enough to, number one, not listen to those first 40 minutes, which they should. And if you haven't, you should. Number two, to listen to her when she says that this was all being pre-planned and set up by the president. JD Vance did what he was supposed to do. He didn't go in there planning to ambush Volodymyr Zelensky. He sat there calmly and silently for 40 minutes as Zelensky did the unthinkable. Okay? I mean, I'm surprised it took a person like JD Vance, who is the president's ultimate wingman. I'm surprised that he was able to stay silent for 40 minutes as Zelensky disrespected the Oval Office, contradicted the President of the United States, and insulted the intelligence of the American people. If anything, JD Vance was a little bit late in his attacks, but hey, again, she's right. That's not what VPs or secretaries of state or foreign ministers, that's not what they're supposed to do. When the big guys are talking, you let the big guys talk. Standard operating procedure. But again, I commend JD Vance for hopping in there and trying to slow the roll of the really awkward situation that Zelensky had created. Now, as far as Zelensky being, she makes the comment, Susan Rice makes the comment that the democratically chosen whatever. We're talking about a guy who's literally jailed his opposition, who has literally subverted the elections. He has not allowed an election since the war started. There's supposed to have been an election, he wouldn't allow it. This is not somebody who is oh, the people have spoken. No, the people have not been allowed to speak in Ukraine, and if they had, then Zelensky would no longer be in office. He started off shortly after the invasion. He started off with like a 90% approval rating. Okay, 90% approval rating amongst the Ukrainian people. It has since dropped to about 50%, and it's going to go down even further. He is toast, and he knows it. The only thing that keeps Volodymyr Zelensky in office is the fact that he's there at war. If the war ends, his political career, at least in Ukraine, is done. He'll probably go be Secretary General of the United Nations or something stupid like that, but at least the Ukrainian people will vote against Volodymyr Zelensky. I'm actually hesitant to continue playing this clip of Susan Rice, but I will.
And as a result, he couldn't sit there in silence as lies were being told about how the war was started, whose responsibility it was, et cetera, et cetera. And he tried to explain what is in fact the case. To suggest that he was not thankful, I can't count the number of times that Zelensky has thanked the American people, the American government, the President of the United States for the critical support that we've provided. It's not about gratitude. It was an effort to humiliate him, to scuttle the U.S.-Ukraine relationship so that Trump no longer feels any obligation to provide support, and to hand U.S. interests and Ukraine and potentially Europe to Putin on a silver platter.
Oh, Madam Ambassador, you really do rely on the ignorance of your audience to push your narrative. Let's be crystal clear about something, because that last batch of lies was the biggest one so far. To suggest that President Trump wants anything other than peace is a betrayal to our eyes, a betrayal to his history. He has pushed for peace while people like Susan Rice have been warmongering on behalf of the United States for decades. She's the one that wants the war to continue. She's the one that wants the United States drawn into a war. She and her cronies are the ones that want World War III. But let's address specifically what she said, this notion that President Trump somehow blew up these negotiations because he wants to pander to Vladimir Putin. No, not at all. As a matter of fact, Vladimir Putin is all in favor. Hey, the U.S. wants to go in there and get the minerals. That's great. That'll help his cause. Vladimir Putin, he won't say this publicly, by the way, but Vladimir Putin would want the United States not militarily involved in Ukraine, but would want the United States to sort of basically be a point of leverage for Ukraine to be able to come to their senses and say, all right, let's rebuild. Here's a whole lot of money that we're going to make off these rare earths. More money, by the way, than they would make if they went to, say, private industry and said, hey, come on in and get these rare earths and cut us in for some. They would get like 10% if that were the case, and President Trump is offering them a very, very lucrative and gracious 50%. That's unheard of, but hey, that's President Trump's trying to do the right thing here. Volodymyr Zelensky is not. Putin would love for that to happen, because he would love for the United States to come in there and do that, because that would give him leverage to be able to successfully and peacefully end this war. But with that said, let's cut to the actual lies by Susan Rice. She stated that President Trump was trying to blow this up. President Trump, this should not have come to this. This deal was on the table for Zelensky to sign before he ever got to D.C. This deal was on the table and summarily rejected by Zelensky, not once, but twice. First, in Kiev itself, when Scott Bessent went there, he got yelled at. He got into a shouting match, apparently, with Zelensky over the deal, because Zelensky did not want to sign it. A week later, in Munich, JD Vance and Marco Rubio met with Zelensky. They said, hey, here's the deal, sign it. And once again, he chose not to. He decided that he did not want to do the deal, again, because of the security guarantees. So then this week, they spent, the negotiators were working. They finally came to a conclusion. It's like, all right, we got this done. Scott Bessent was going on cable news and Fox News and saying, yeah, it's a done deal. It's going to happen. They're coming in. Zelensky's flying in to sign the deal. It was Zelensky who was participating in the setup. It was Zelensky who blindsided the Trump administration after giving every signal, every indication that he was coming here to sign the deal. Okay, President Trump's like, okay, cool. Come in, we'll do a little press conference. We'll go have some lunch, and then we'll go back in the back room and sign the deal. Awesome. That's how deals are done. Zelensky decided that he wanted to blow it up ahead of time. He decided, or it was probably decided for him by people like Susan Rice, by the way. It was decided that he would not go there to honor the deal, to sign the deal as is, not without trying to publicly pressure and humiliate President Trump into accepting security guarantees, into accepting that the United States was going to get involved directly with American troops on the ground in Ukraine. Zelensky was instructed by people like Susan Rice, by members of the globalist elite cabal, to get the United States ready to participate in World War III. So Susan Rice is correct. This was a setup. Where she gets it wrong, or where she's lying to everybody, is that the setup was on their side, not by President Trump. They want World War III. They crave World War III. They are so desperate to use Ukraine to engage in the final battles. They want the United States of America to be destroyed, and they believe, or they try to, use Volodymyr Zelensky as the bait, as the puppet, to achieve their ultimate goals. Praise God for JD Vance and President Trump for seeing through the ruse and for not engaging in their idiocy. Please go to jdrucker.com/find, jdrucker.com/find. You'll find all of the various places where I publish my work, my podcasts, my videos, my socials, everything like that. jdrucker.com/find.